As Pete Hegseth continues to fight on, focus turns to Senator Joni Ernst, but not in a good way. The Supreme Court takes on child mutilation surgeries, plus momentum builds for the Department of Government Efficiency. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
Okay, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Friday. Hope you had a great week. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start with Pete Hegseth, Joni Ernst, in the battle to secure the position of Secretary of Defense in the new Trump administration. As you know, President-elect Trump has nominated veteran and former Fox News host Pete Hegseth for the position. Trump has named many people who are raising eyebrows and raising them in a good way. People who will come in and truly clean house. From Tulsi Gabbard to Elon Musk to Vivek Ramaswamy to RFK Jr. But perhaps the two biggest lightning rods in the group have been Matt Gaetz for Attorney General and Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. Now, don't get me wrong. Just like with Matt Gaetz, some of the scrutiny and criticism leveled against Hegseth has been earned and brought on by his own actions. But people can grow and change and be redeemed. The real issue here is the level of venom and underhandedness that is emerging simply because Hegseth represents a real opportunity to shake things up and dismantle the status quo. The problem is that the status quo is entrenched, widespread, and powerful. Hegseth, for his part, is standing up and fighting.
But this will not be a process tried in the media. I don't answer to anyone in this group. None of you. Not to that camera at all. I answer to President Trump, who received 76 million votes on behalf and a mandate for change. I answer to the 100 senators who are part of this process and those in the committee. And I answer to my Lord and Savior and my wife and my family. I'm proud to be here. And as long as Donald Trump wants me in this fight, I'm going to be standing right here in this fight, fighting to bring our Pentagon back to what it needs to be.
Now, the media are going to do their thing. They are a corrupt leftist propaganda machine, but we all know that. The real disappointment is coming from Republican senators who would rather keep the military-industrial complex just humming along rather than take a stand for what is right. One senator in particular seems to be drawing the spotlight, and that is Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, who some sources say that her current lack of support for Hegseth is driven by her own ambitions for the job and the fact that she would certainly keep the military funding flowing without any real reform.
So I think it is a great time for us to reflect upon the life and the loss of George Floyd and understand the significance of moving forward and having really positive, encouraging talks about what it is to be a person of color across the United States.
Yep, that's Ernst bending the knee for George Floyd. That's pretty woke, but surely she doesn't go for all the transgender nonsense, right?
You have a female barracks and you have a transgender woman who has not transitioned. We shouldn't make the rest of the unit uncomfortable about that setting. There are certain accommodations we can make for that transgender individual. But if they bring value to our unit, if they have specialties that we can use, especially if we want to maintain an all-volunteer force, we want to bring that talent into our services.
Friends, no one can transition from a man to a woman. And the fact that she used that word just shows how out of touch she is. And then there's the border bill.
We're not letting 5,000 people a day into the United States. But even my own colleagues were out there knowingly putting out misinformation about the bill because they wanted to tank it. Why? Because we had a former president that even before the bill was written said it's garbage, you don't need it. I have all the authority I need to shut down the border when I become president.
So, this is a senator who is slow playing her support of Hegseth. Consider that Murkowski, Collins, and others have expressed reservations, and you see the tenuous position in which Hegseth sits. News outlets have been floating a story about Governor Ron DeSantis as a possible replacement. I think Trump should stick with Hegseth. I think DeSantis would be a great pick as well, but not in any universe should someone like Ernst be considered. And any prospects of her serving in the Trump administration should be shut down immediately. All right, next let's talk about the Supreme Court. But first, If you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, regardless of platform, just search out my name, hit that subscribe button, make sure notifications are turned on. That way you can follow the show and help us grow. Okay, next let's talk about the Supreme Court, which was hearing arguments this week on a Tennessee law that would ban genital mutilation surgeries and sterilization chemicals from being used on children. It's grotesque and savage, and yet those on the radical left, including some in the medical community, will describe these techniques and procedures as, quote, gender-affirming care. It's unreal. Just like the left will look you straight in the eye and say that abortion, the taking of an innocent human life, is health care. These poor children are victims of leftist parents and medical professionals who are pushing these life-altering procedures on helpless, vulnerable children. Now, during arguments, the stunning level of not only incompetence, but also left-wing ideology was presented for all to see by the liberals on the court. Here's Justice Sotomayor when discussing the harmful nature of these procedures.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk, even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment?
This is just infuriating. To focus on the fact that these procedures have an inherent surgical risk is not the point. All surgeries have a risk. The point is that these surgeries are barbaric. They are done to address a mental condition. Healthy body parts are being destroyed, mutilated, under the notion that it'll make the person feel better. And in these cases, the person is a child. And the argument about the necessity of these techniques completely fails under just a low-level amount of scrutiny. The left says that body parts don't define what a man or woman is. And yet, they are pushing for the development of a multi-billion-dollar industry to, quote, transition a person by cutting off body parts. It's insane. Here's more comments from Tennessee's Attorney General on how the worldwide evidence supports Tennessee's action in banning these procedures.
People can write this off as, oh, the red states are waging a culture war, but the United Kingdom, Sweden, Finland, Norway are not red states. They're countries that pioneered the use of these treatments on kids. Then they looked at the evidence, realized that the risks dramatically outweighed the benefits, and severely restricted access to these treatments. So we think that that's a really important data point to show that this is not some sort of bias. This is just looking at the medical evidence and making an informed decision.
Now, the transgender ACLU attorney who was arguing before on behalf of Joe Biden was recently on CNN and had this to say about the Tennessee law.
And these are young people who may have known since they were 2 years old exactly who they are, who suffered for 6-7 years before they had any relief. And what's happening here, it's not the kids who are consenting to this treatment, it's the parents who are consenting to the treatment. And as a parent, I would say when our children are suffering, we are suffering. And these are parents who love their children, who are listening to the advice of their doctors, of the mainstream medical community, and doing what's right for their kids, and the state of Tennessee has displaced their judgment.
I hope and pray that more medical professionals speak out about these procedures before more children are harmed. The left has gone off the deep end, and sanity can and must prevail. All right, next let's talk about the Department of Government Efficiency and how Ramaswamy and Musk are stirring things up. Tapped by President-elect Trump to provide a full review of the government and identify waste, fraud, and areas where we can save the taxpayers' money, Vivek and Elon are rallying more people to their side, even some Democrats.
We've been having various meetings with our whip and with our speaker within committees on where we can cut, where we can reduce, where there's waste, abuse, and fraud. And frankly, Sean and Em, it's endless. We just got to start at the low-lying fruit, which in some cases is contracting, certainly waste, abuse, and fraud. We have over 7,000 buildings that are completely unoccupied. And get this, prior to COVID, 3% of the federal workforce would not basically on a daily basis show up for work. You know what it is today? Over 90%.
It's unreal. Over 90% of these federal workers don't show up for work. They work remotely. Meanwhile, that practice raises serious questions on how much work these federal employees actually do. And it points out the waste of heating, cooling, and maintaining these federal office buildings. Put them to use or close them down. One or the other. Here's more from Representative Dan Muser, who was asked if it surprises him that Democrats are joining the effort.
Well, it does a little, because the Harris-Biden plan was to spend another $1.5 trillion next year, and that was supported by the Democrats in the House and the Senate. And meanwhile, we're bringing in DOGE to reduce spending by over $1 trillion, which we think is actually doable. So we'll see what they bring to the table. If they're there just to raise concerns that we're going too far, well, they're going to be surprised.
The reason some Democrats are joining now is because they really have no choice. The American people rejected the far-left extremist anti-common sense agenda. For Democrats to oppose getting rid of waste and fraud, the fallout will be intense, and it will continue the narrative of Democrats being out of touch and being the party of the liberal elite. Okay, so we've seen rhino Republicans opposing the MAGA movement, leftists promoting sterilization of children, plus government waste run amok. We need to ask these people, do you have a relaxed brain?
I got what you call, a relaxed brain.
Okay, first up on Relaxed Brain Friday is Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, who voted to convict then-President Trump on the bogus January 6th impeachment charges. He has now drawn a serious primary opponent in his quest to get reelected in 2026. Louisiana State Treasurer John Fleming is stepping up to challenge Cassidy. President-elect Trump recently described Cassidy as, quote, one of the worst senators in the United States Senate, a total flake, end quote. Let's hope the message gets sent loud and clear that Americans want a new direction, and Cassidy is not part of it. Next, there was a Kamala Harris sighting this week at the National Black Caucus of State Legislators Conference. Harris, whose only previous public statement was that drunken-sounding clip released by the National Democrats, seemed to attempt another fake accent before settling down into her normal cadence.
I knew y'all were in town. I couldn't let it go without coming by to say hello. And to say thank you to everyone here, all of these extraordinary leaders. I wanted to come by and say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah, whatever you may celebrate. But most important, let's make sure we celebrate each other.
Part of me is going to miss her. Just a little bit. And finally, here's some breaking headlines from the Babylon Bee. First, in a growing trend to reject wokeness, we have this dramatic news. Walmart ends DEI program will now treat all employees like garbage, regardless of race or gender. And amid growing concerns of preemptive pardons by Joe Biden, we have this. Suspicious? Biden pardons Hunter for anything he might do tonight between 2:30 and 4:17 a.m. outside the Capitol Heights Applebee's. Friends, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, today's show's one sheet is available to Patreon supporters using the link in the description. The one sheet gives you the links to all the videos and stories used on today's show, so you can dive even deeper into each issue. And with that, our next show will be Monday evening at the usual time. Until then, I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. All right, friends, thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button above. Once you do, tell your friends, share it, spread the word about the 13-minute news hour so we can keep growing. And for more great content, check out these videos right here, and I'll see you next time.